Good morning, everyone, and happy Monday. Well, this is the week. This is the week we've talked about for a long time. It's the BRICS summit in Russia, where they're going to outline kind of their grand plan for BRICS going forward. Now, we've talked about the new currency. Actually, it's more of a trade settlement currency than a currency that every country is going to use in day-to-day operations, but we've gone over that already. This summit's going to be bigger than that. It's really about trade. And money's, of course, part of this, but it's also the geography. How are they going to connect trade routes in a way that's separated from the West? And that's their goal. They want to pull away from the West. They want to move away from the dollar system. So, a little quick history. This idea that BRICS is putting forward has been terrifying to the British for a couple of centuries. And so now you have to go way back, but there was Sir Halford John Mackinder who proposed a theory, and he said whoever controls this middle part of the Eurasian continent, he called it the island of the world, would control trade throughout the entire world. Well, this terrified the British because they're way over here. And they wanted trade moving from India, you probably remember that, through their ships, because Britain was a sea power, through the Red Sea, out through the Suez Canal, through the Mediterranean, through Gibraltar, up the coast, and then finally up here into the Baltics and into Russia. All that would have been under British control. Their fear was that Russia would build trade routes straight up and down, which explains one little war in history we don't follow much. That was the Crimean War. Britain sent troops to Crimea. That's in the news today. That's where the Russians have occupied. Ukraine wants it back. Here's the reason why. We went over this a few months back. They're proposing the International North-South Trade Corridor. And I should go back to the map one more time. Instead of trade going all this way, remember, they were going to go from the ports in India up to Iran and unload. Then they were going to take rail and highways and pipelines straight up through Azerbaijan to Moscow. Well, that sure cuts that route down this way, and it would be totally absent Western influence. So here's kind of the map, and you can see the old way, through the ocean, up and around, and then the new way that they're proposing just straight up. But there's more to it than that, because remember, we said is all right, if they get that international north-south trade corridor up, think of that as I-25. Then you're going to have I-10, I-40, I-70, I-90 crisscrossing. Here's what they're going to propose as one of those crisscrosses. This map, you see that blue line? That's the Danube River. All right, the Danube. It starts in Germany. And let's take this down just for a second. Back to the map. When we think of rivers here in the United States, we almost always think north-south. The Mississippi runs north to south. The Missouri comes this way, the Rio Grande, the Columbia. The Danube's interesting. It really runs east-west. It starts here in Germany, and it weaves its way through Central Europe, and it dumps out here into the Black Sea. That's a big river. It's like a Mississippi, but heading the other direction. And look where it runs through. It runs through these countries that are basically landlocked. It's running through Hungary. It's running through Slovakia. It's running through Croatia. Croatia's got a coastline. But you get the idea here. What's happening is they're saying, look, we want this trade route to start in Germany. Well, Germany's still an industrial powerhouse. Link it up with Russian natural resources and any of the natural resources and products coming out of Central Europe. And we want that to come through the Black Sea, then down to the Mediterranean and out to either the Middle Eastern nations or even all the way over here to China and India. Well, that's pretty efficient. This is what they're proposing. And for the landlocked countries up here, this is a way for economic development. I mean, nobody wants to be Bolivia, where you can't trade with anybody. This is what the British have feared forever. And now this is what they're proposing out of this BRICS summit. So this is what Walt and I will be watching for. And what does it mean for you? It really is an attack on the entire geopolitical system. Let me add, there's one more piece I need to add to this. This is why this Ukraine war is so important. When Russia pushes through to, and you can't really see it on the map very well, but there's this river in Ukraine that's basically their Mississippi. It's called the Dnieper. It makes a lazy backwards C, letter C, and it comes this way and it dumps into the Black Sea as well. But Odessa is just over here. When Russia, and I believe when it's not even much in doubt anymore, gets all the way to the river and then takes the coastline, on this map, you can't really see it very well, but Odessa would be right over here, just off the map. Russia will control the entire North Black Sea coast, and their navy will then be the navy that provides protection for the goods that can then sail down and do all the things we just talked about. This is why the Ukraine war is so incredibly important for trade and why we're involved. Because for people who say, well, what's our strategic interest in Ukraine? I think you're beginning to figure it out. So what does it mean for the dollar? If this thing plays out the way they're going to propose and it grips, it'll be really tough on the dollar. That means more inflation in the United States. That's bad for the country, but good for your investments. And with that, I'll turn it over to Walt.